Let's talk rugby. Alan Quinlan, Peter O'Mahony and CJ Stander and Simon Zebo and Razzie Erasmus. Things aren't looking good for Munster at the moment.
And Donegal Ryan. Yeah, so it started last year for Munster. They've had a tough story really in the last kind of 6-7 months, with Rassie leaving, then Donegal Ryan not signing, departing to Racing. Then Grobler, their new second row signing from Racing, gets injured early on in pre-season. He hasn't played since. What else is coming up? Zebo leaves, Earls gets injured, Farrell is injured, Taute, knee reconstruction in between as well. So it's been all kind of disappointing news from no good news story.
Just when it looked like they had a long-term answer at out half as well, there's just some doubts about Tyler Blendell's form.
Yeah,
he's injured as well.
He straps this year, so it's been tough on him. Considering what happened last year and the run they went on and where they put themselves, the growth they had as a group, it's just come unsettled and unstuck a little bit this year. Even though the season has been, you could say it's
grand.
They've been fine.
Yeah,
they've been fine. They lost, the Leinster match, Glasgow match away. There's been a couple of kind of big losses there in Europe. Probably should have beaten Cast in the first game, which when you look back on it, would have been a really good result. A draw was actually quite a good result. Good win at home to Racing against a very strong Racing side in Thomond Park. And they head into Leicester now in the next couple of weeks with no Keith Earls, Chris Farrell, Taute, and potentially Zebo missing, and that uncertainty at out half. I think it's they've been unlucky with some of the stuff that's gone on. I
thought unfairly last year the backline was a bit criticised for not being that creative, but actually they were really good in loads of those big games where whenever the forwards created a chance they would be completely clinical, and it was on the basis of that list of players that you've just spoken about. So you take them out and really expectations need to be tempered seriously for these back-to-backs.
Yeah, well, if you look at last year, Ger, it wasn't probably in the game plan to be very expansive. Rassie Erasmus wanted to do the simple things well and play to their strengths and be really direct. And to be fair to them, they were absolutely relentless in the way they played, and they were blowing teams away, and they were scoring a lot of tries from being quite direct in mauls, in just individual carries. But they were blowing teams away, and they just couldn't keep up with that tempo that they were creating, playing in the right areas. They came unstuck in the semi-final against Saracens and the final against Scarlets. Emotionally, I think they were spent when it got to that final, and just made some errors in defence, and Scarlets kind of capitalised at the top of the ground stuff, and they were full of confidence. So it ended up being a disappointing end, but so many positives throughout the season after the incredible adversity of Axel's passing at the start. And I just felt it needed to kick on. The Rassie story was the first hammer blow. Well, Donegal Ryan, Rassie, they were two kind of big blows that they didn't need. You talk about having growth and building a little bit, and now you've Zebo gone, the injury profile, as I said, and then you're talking about Peter O'Mahony, someone who kind of epitomises the kind of character and spirit that you want.
Yeah.
He was a natural successor coming in when Paul. Even when I was there, Peter kind of overlapped for a couple of seasons, and I played a couple of times with him, played for a couple of seasons with him, and you just saw from the very start that this was a guy who had that leadership quality, that ability to motivate guys, and if somebody like that leaves now, what's it kind of saying to the structure and trying to build what you're trying to build for the future, and then the uncertainty with Stander as well.
Well, I'll ask you specifically about Stander after we watch this video. It's Donegal Callan speaking last night on Wednesday Night Rugby. Himself and Keith Wood were on with Nathan last night. Here he is talking about when he himself realised his own value.
For me, it's a no-brainer. Peter O'Mahony playing for Munster, boom, just make it happen. It's just like he's the heartbeat of the place at the moment, and it's so important that we keep that. And just on a personal basis, he's a fellow that drops logs to my house since I moved to England, so I'd be in an awful way. Jenny and the kids would be frozen at home.
Did you ever need to go and push it with the IRFU? Did you ever need to let it be known, get your agent to put it out there that there was interest from abroad to get the best deal?
Oh yeah, look, certainly myself, I just remember once in 2005, I went over to Gloucester to have a look. I didn't know my market value. I was on a provincial contract, and you can chat to agents, but there's nothing like actually sitting down across the way from the clubs and finding out what your value was. And that led to me moving on to a national contract, and I was really happy with that. What's happened now is the money is so great that, like Nathan, for me, it would have been a disaster if they'd offered me a brilliant deal, because I didn't want to go, I loved playing for Munster, loved playing for Ireland. I knew all the how well looked after I was within the system, the player welfare. Woody touched on it there, but there's a value on that. There's a cost value on it. Some of our big players, like we spoke about Johnny Sexton the other week, how little, how many openings at 10 there is for other guys, for how well he's looked after within the system. So I think you have to put a value on that, and you also have to put a value on playing for a team you love, playing for a team you grew up wanting to play for. So I feel these players, they'll know they'll get money and they'll get bigger money, but I think they just want what's right and what's the market value. They could go for more money to different clubs and bigger clubs, but I think there's a price on being looked after, and there's a price on winning with your friends and winning with a team you love.
And it's finding that balance between what the value of what you should be paid, and then that little bit of stuff that is emotional, and then actually a fair price in the IRFU. What I'm being told is that the IRFU are lowballing everybody at the moment, and that they're not paying anybody what they feel is their market rate, and they've got the constant poor mouth on the whole time, and we're nearly broke, and they're not. They're making money hand over fist, and they've got access to pots of cash that other sports organisations don't have, and get on with it and pay our best players.
Yeah, it's tricky. It's kind of like the stock exchange, isn't it? When you're playing well, your stock is high, and when you're kind of not playing particularly well, it kind of drops down. So you think someone like Peter O'Mahony, his stock has to be high. He's coming on the back of, he had that injury at the World Cup. So if his contract is up in between there and he's not back in the Irish squad and he's just playing for Munster and he's struggling to get back and fitness-wise, then you don't have a huge kind of leg to stand on. You're hoping to get a contract with incentives.
Yeah.
And incentives are built into a lot of these contracts. So I think the IRFU are fair that way. They incentivise a lot of the contracts for guys who are maybe not guaranteed starters in the Irish team. But his stock has to be high because he captained the Lions in the summer. He's back on the Irish team. He played well in throughout November. But it's a business, Ger, and the IRFU get the criticism sometimes of not making the right offers. But they're going to lowball if they can, and they're going to do the lowest deal they can possible. And in return, as Donncha was saying there, your agent is sent in to be the bad cop, and sometimes look for way over the odds and meet somewhere in the middle. But you think that Donncha or that Peter O'Mahony is one of the easier ones to try and get done, that you meet somewhere, okay, and this is the thing to understand for people. If you get a good contract here that you're happy with, it's probably going to be lower than France or maybe one or two of the top clubs in England. But the price then of putting on the Irish jersey of your player welfare, if I have a little knock on my shoulder on Saturday and I'm heading into Pro 14, with respect to the 14, there's probably 2 or 3 back rows who are chomping at the bit to play instead of me, and I'm coming back from the national team, and there's a couple of guys who there's not a huge difference in, they're probably as good. So you have that luxury to say, look, we're not going to risk your shoulder this week, honey, because we've Europe in 2 weeks, we've big Interpro derbies, you're not playing this week. You're just going to do some fitness hits, and you get a little chance maybe to have a little fitness hit and recover a bit. That's the benefit of being here. You play less games. You go to France, you're a commodity. I know they have big squads, but if you have that little niggle heading into the weekend,
you get an injection, you play.
Yeah, it's possibly you're being pushed that way a little bit. So plus you have the tax back opportunity here, where you get some of your tax back when you retire.
Don't you have that though now? Didn't they fix that so that if you finish?
Yeah, you can still get it abroad. You can still move and come back, and you don't have to retire here. So that changed that a little bit. But I think what Peter O'Mahony would want to get, and CJ Stander, is get to somewhere where they feel that it's their market value or close to it.
Yeah.
So they're on a very good national contract here. The problem with the IRFU is they're trying to limit the number of guys on national contracts that doesn't just keep increasing. So it's 14 or 15 at the moment, that it isn't
Mostly
20,
Leinster,
25. Yeah, it is. And
It doesn't really create the sense that we're all in it together. It's
yeah,
like,
and there's frustration from Munster, obviously,
There has
because
to be.
Donegal O'Callaghan. So Jamie Heaslip got offered one last year, a 3-year one. Donegal O'Callaghan Donegal Ryan was offered a provincial one. He decides that's not good enough. I'm going to Paris. So there's a little bit of frustration from Munster people, and they want Peter O'Mahony to stay. They want CJ Stander. These are the guys that you're trying to build a future with Munster on.
if both of them went, it's an absolute travesty, and you would not be able to see any kind of sense of recovery for Munster for the next 3 or 4 seasons, because granted, O'Donoghue looks like a great talent, but then you've got to go and invest in somebody who's probably not going to be Irish qualified, who is a top quality international back row, to make up for that, and then you're spending loads of money.
How
anyway.
do you replace him, Ger?
Like, you can't.
You can't, because you don't have a checkbook that you can go out and sign 5 guys and.
So go and market these lads properly to get the money in that
Yeah.
you need to pay them. Go and put the hand out to the local businesses.
But
or
if you're
to
the IRFU
packers.
and all those elements are coming in, do you feel like pressurised into giving what the player is asking? Would you? And
Yes,
Yeah.
because these are the foundation stones on which we're supposed to be building to reach a World Cup
I couldn't agree
semi-final.
with you more. So what if Peter O'Mahony and CJ Stander, not just the quality of the player, so you might say, oh well, this guy's coming through, or this guy can be as good. It's the experiences they've had, particularly trying to grow the club and get it back to, being in a situation where they're getting into knockout stages of Pro 14 and Europe every year. I think that's a minimum standard. To win it again for Munster there's a lot of, it's going to be very difficult with the financial weight that's going on in France and with the likes of Saracens in the UK.
I agree. It's not.
But you've
It's
got
not
to keep them somewhere or another.
Exactly. It's not impossible for those teams to be competitive. It would be if you start losing the O'Mahonys and Standards. And just put your Munster fan hat on.
But I
for a
don't
second,
think you
right?
will. Just before you go on, I think these deals will get done.
Well, they better.
I think,
Like-
there'll be uproar down in Thomond Park and people in Cork and all over Munster if these deals don't get done, because
How many season tickets do you sell next season if there's no Zebo, there's no Stander, and there's no O'Mahony, or if there's only one of the 3 of them next year? It's almost impossible to convince the Munster fans. It looks like this year is going to be a difficult season for Munster. If they make it to the quarterfinals.
they're having no
of
luck with the
European Cup.
injuries, to be fair.
Exactly.
If they have their full team out and everyone's fit and available, I think they're potential winners of the Pro 14 on their day if they get into the knockout stages, which I think they will with the conferences. They're going to get into the conference stage anywhere where it's knockout rugby. Europe is the key, I think. They've Leicester coming up in the next few weeks, then they've got Racing and Cast, and I always remember this as a player. When you finish that block of European 6 games around the 20th of January every time, and you're looking forward to quarterfinals rugby, whether it's away from home or at home, preferably, you're in a good position. The season takes on a kind of a new lease of life and then your internationals are away a little bit, and you have a quarter-final to look forward to. The fans have, there's
changes
energy
everything
in the place.
If you're the IRFU and you're looking at how the world game is going, do you try and tie these players down for 4 years now and just do World Cup to World Cup cycles? So at the start of your World Cup cycle, not in the middle of it.
The younger ones. So look, Gary Ringrose is up. His deal, I try and sign him in for 4 years. Absolutely. If he gets injured and has to retire, God forbid,
pay the insurance.
That's the insurance scenario. But someone like Gary Ringrose, only 21, 22, you got to sign him long term.
I'd sign him up to the next World Cup.
Yeah, if you could. Ian Henderson, you don't want uncertainty coming in around. But then for the agent, they're saying, well, hold on a minute now, the increase is market
enough.
value,
Yeah.
but you can incentivise them as well, you know what I mean?
If you make the Lions, or maybe if you make the Lions, we don't want to make the
But someone
Lions.
like Henderson, you think long term, you'd have a lot of clubs, he's up at the end of the season, a lot of clubs sniffing around him. Tyke Furlong.
Give
I
Tyke
think
Furlong
he's
$1 million a
an
year.
astronomical tight head player. I just think he's phenomenal. The energy levels, the tackles he puts in, he's just teak tough, and the skill set he has. I think he's just the most complete tight head I've ever seen in Tyke Furlong. I think he's just a phenomenal player. He's got to keep that going. There's a bit of pressure on him.
Yeah,
his elevation has been really quick in the last kind of 18 months.
And he's stepped up every time. There's been no sense
and he's just lovely
falling.
and calm and relaxed and good attitude and very humble and very respectful to opposition, and I just think he's a great bit of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that the players that we're talking about are all cornerstones of selling this team to the public and selling the game to the next generation. And that's where, so we're giving you all this money and we're sweating that money by making sure that you're ambassadors for the sport properly.
And if you're signing the player, Ger, you got to look and see what's the value as from a playing point of view. What do they bring to their province? What do they bring to their national team? And you know, obviously, then you give value and you feel sometimes the IRFU. There was a situation with Keith Earls a few years ago where he was nearly gone to Saracens.
Yeah.
And that there was an impasse and went right to the last kind of step. He had signed heads of agreement to go to Saracens, which you can come back from. And he was more or less announcing that he was gone, and then it changed and he got the deal that his agent wanted, which was higher than what he was being offered. Still lower than what he was going to get off Saracens. But like I said, he then says, well, you know, it is lower,
see the
but
trade-off.
Here's my value, play less matches and I have that green jersey
That's
in my
fair
back.
enough. Whatever the difference is, just don't make it so that the difference is 2 or 3 times. Like what we're hearing about CJ Stander is that it could potentially be 3 times what he's getting paid.
That's the offer. And then what will you have then? You'll have a load of people jumping on this, well, this naturalisation and heated, you know, passion for Ireland. But I guarantee, and I'd question anyone out there, if they got offered 3 times their salary in their normal everyday job, what way would they feel?
Like there's no question.
Loyalty, nationality, all that stuff. It's the last thing you would think about, because ultimately at the end of the day we think of the coin, and that's understandable because you're trying to support families, you're trying to pay mortgages, and you're building your future around that, you know. So for any of these players, considering Andrew Conway is another one there's uncertainty about whether he will sign or not, or whether he will get his value. Is he seen as someone who's on the Irish team now? Probably not yet, not a starter yet, a guaranteed starter.
He's in the matchday squad.
He's in the mix.
Close to it.
He's in the mix. So he stays on a provincial contract, but is he getting that increase, that value? So I think just the last thing the Munster need now at the moment is to lose anyone. I mean that respect to the other provinces. I think there's more strength and depth in some other areas in the other provinces, but they don't need to lose any more players.
We should mention Ulster as well. A lot of their players, a lot of their key players. Henderson is up.
Henderson's up. Rory Best is up. So I think Rory Best's one. He'll be. You know, Rory will probably get done. He's going to be captain for 2018 Six Nations. Tommy Bowe's the one. Tommy's on a national contract. Andrew Trimble's on a national contract.
I think Trimble has another year left.
Yeah, Tommy Bowe's up at the end of this season, so that'll probably change. Will it go to a provincial contract for Tommy? Jared Payne, the uncertainty around him, he's on a national contract, you know, whether he gets back playing or not with the headaches he's having. He's had a horrendous time around that, so there's a few more big ones there. But I think the biggest one of all, from an Irish point of view, is Tadhg Furlong. You got to get him signed up. They're all big deals.
Sign him to the 4-year deal, give him what he wants, turn him into an absolute legend of the game, and make sure that everybody knows that Tadhg Furlong is this person that he's exactly the type of person you want promoting the game. And anyway, good character there. One last thing, there's some rumours of unrest in Ulster. Things are a bit uncertain up there at the moment.
Yeah, and I think they've a very interesting, and like all the provinces, I think if you look at the great intrigue of the back-to-back games in Europe, Munster play Leicester in Thomond Park on the Saturday. Must-win game for them. Yeah. They go to Leicester the following week. You know, it's phenomenal. But I think Harlequins, Ulster away to Harlequins in the Twickenham Stoop, and I think they've got to get. There's massive pressure on them to try and... Well, if they're to get out of the group, they've got to win both those games. So they've been real up and down this season, some disappointing loss. They lost to Zebra over in Zebra. So when a result like that is thrown out at you,
it's just
there's something wrong.
There's ripples there after that. And that was the first loss of the season, I think.
Yeah, they were beaten heavily by La Rochelle away in Europe.
When you add a new coaching ticket like that, it has to bed down really quickly for everybody just to be quiet. And just for people to buy in and to have time, people are kind of, that's an interesting decision.
The coaching ticket was added because of the disappointment of last year. They're really disappointing in Europe, disappointing in the Pro 12. They didn't make the playoffs. So
it leaves the person who's left a little bit isolated.
Yeah, and Les Kiss is he's a really, really nice bloke, but something is not right there in the mix. What's going on? Whether it's the players, the coaches not betting together. So it's a tough job for him at the moment, and I think there'll be judgment around these two games, because if they get two positive results there, they have a chance of getting out of the group. In second, La Rochelle will probably win it, but if they don't, I think it's, you look at the Benetton game last Friday night, Andrew Trimble scores in the 78th minute. I think John O'Gibbs said afterwards, what were the positives of the game? Well, the first 78 minutes were all negatives, and that was the positive, the last 2 minutes where they won the game. So
things like that can change a season, but like it's
just becoming a bit of a little common theme for Ulster. They've one good win, 3 bad ones. It's just not right for the level of investment they have there. Piatow's leaving at the end of the season. Yeah,
that window is closed where they were one of the teams you could see kind of breaking up. I've got a couple of quick comments to bring you. Mick O'Donoghue, very thoughtful on Facebook this morning. I understood the anti-rugby snobbery at one stage. A bunch of rich private school kids playing a sport for rich private school kids, while the GAA was for any kid from any kind of family, rich or poor. Professionalism changed things. Big, hardy farm lads playing at country clubs could become international stars. I'm from Tullow. One look at the underage setup in that club will tell you how huge an influence role models have in the community. The number of kids in that club will put most GAA clubs to shame. There's a change coming where the sense of rugby being just for the elite. Now, still the pathways haven't quite filtered through.
I never bought into that because I came from the club scene myself. I kind of had an attitude that maybe some of the school systems were elitist and that they were getting favoured over. I tried to make an Irish foundation squad when I was captain of the Irish Youths. I was the only one from the Irish Youths team who was invited into this foundation set up for, it was kind of bringing the best of the schools and club guys together and put them on training programs, diet, nutrition, all that for a year. But I was the only one from the club scene, so it was easy kind of buy it. It's changed a lot now. A lot of the schools, even non-rugby playing schools, have rugby programs. Rurally rugby is very strong as well.
What you're seeing now is that anybody who's really good at club level at underage is actually getting a scholarship to come into the school.
There's a little bit of that, where some of the clubs are kind of inviting guys. So from someone from Naas in a public school out there, and they're getting attention around rugby. It's
hard to turn it down
to come into school in Dublin here.
Well, it's like reading some of the interviews during the week. Somebody referenced one of the school strength and conditioning coaches. I was like, all right. So they've got a rugby coach and they've got a strength and conditioning coach, and all those other facilities that they have. Like it's kind of world class facilities. So you're asking people not to avail of the opportunity that their rugby skills have given them for this education, which is obviously very expensive. And it kind of is.
Sure, my little fella's 8. He's playing rugby 3 times a week as an 8-year-old in school.
Right.
That's phenomenal in Dublin here. Yeah, it's phenomenal. So there's so much. It's semi-professional for kids, really, the kind of facilities they have. But I think it's great for them. He loves it.
People will have mixed feelings about that.
Yeah, of course. But he plays GAA as well, and he loves that. So it's different. But I think that snobbery thing it's not there like it used to be. I think, like I said at the start when we were chatting to Brendan, so many of the rugby lads play GAA anyway. Even if they've gone to a private school here in Dublin or in Limerick or in Cork or up north, they play. A lot of them are involved.
Less so up north.
Less so up north, yeah. But a lot of them are involved heavily in GAA clubs and love the GAA as well and have played GAA.
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely a way for everybody to coexist happily. It's just working out exactly what the boundaries are.
Hey, hope you enjoyed that latest offering from Off the Ball. If you want to subscribe, and you should, check out just up here. All our latest stuff is just down here. Generally, knock yourself out.